Okay.
Thank you. Erev Tov, everyone. So tonight is Lag BaOmer. The Gemara mentions Lag BaOmer in reference to the fact that the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva were destroyed. The Gemara gives a figure of 12,000 pairs, meaning 24,000. And that on Lag BaOmer, this sad event ended. So it became a day of semi-rejoicing, of relief, because this disaster ended. The Gemara is very cryptic. It doesn't say much about it. The Gemara says, that the ultimate spiritual cause of the disaster was that they did not treat each other with respect and with tolerance, and therefore their destruction occurred. But we don't know the background to it at all. We don't know what was the story. What happened here? And so there are different streams of understanding. There's the Ravid, the Avram ben David, not the Ravid of Squares of the Rambam, but the other Ravid. So he puts it into a historical sequence, and he says that this was the rebellion. It was attached to the rebellion of Bar Kokhba against the Romans, and that the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva participated in the rebellion, and in fact consisted of much of Bar Kokhba's army, and that the destruction was the fact that the Romans triumphed, and says because we know that there were great internal differences within the Jewish people then, and it led to the Romans being able to divide and conquer easily. So it had to do with Bar Kokhba. There are other streams that it has nothing to do with Bar Kokhba at all, who also remains a mysterious figure to us. Akiva said that he could have been the Mincha Maariv Shiur. So if you look in old Jewish books, let's say until, I would say till the 19th century, almost, you'll find that the symbol of Lag BaOmer was always bows and arrows, archery. And that was a reference to the time of Bar Kokhba, to the weapons that were used then, and that really it's a story of war. And there was a custom amongst Jews, Eastern European Jews as well, that on Lag BaOmer, Jewish young people would go out into the woods and the fields and participate in archery contests and in mock games of war. All of this has somehow a memorial memory aid to the fact that this somehow has to do with the great revolt of the Jews of Bar Kokhba in 163 to 165 of the Common Era. In our time, that is diminished for very reasons. At our time, a different custom arose. A number of different customs arose. One was the marking of the death of Rav Shimon ben Yochai, the great Tana, the Rajbi. And this custom to mark his death and to visit the place of his grave, Maron, is a custom from the 16th century, and from the time of the Ari, the Mikubalim in Tzfat. And so Shimon ben Yochai became inextricably bound together with Lag BaOmer. What was Lag BaOmer before Shimon ben Yochai? No one talks about that. But that somehow it's the Yom HaHilula. It's a day of praise and of comfort because Shimon ben Yochai defends us in the world to come. And especially amongst the Mekubalim, and they wrote special prayers, piyutim, that many in the Jewish world recite, not just on Lag BaOmer, but they recite it every Friday night, or Shabbos for Shalashudas, the famous piyut Bar Yochai. And so Shimon ben Yochai became the symbol of Lag BaOmer. In the 18th century, there arose a custom in Eastern Europe of lighting bonfires on the night of Lag BaOmer. So some said that that was a zecher, a remembrance to the fact that in Second Temple times, when the Sanhedrin wanted to announce the day of Rosh Chodesh and to have it transmitted to the Jews that lived far away, so they did it through a system of bonfires. The Gemara lists for us the 10 stations, so to speak, that from Yerushalayim to this place and from this place to that place, and then finally all 10 were lit. The Gemara says, "Shekilkalu Tzdukim." The Tzdukim, however, who disagreed with the power of the Sanhedrin to establish the calendar, so they lit bonfires at different times in order to confuse the people. So that system was done away with. And the system that we have today of the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh, in the synagogue, we announce when Rosh Chodesh would be. And so that became the method of informing the Jewish people when Rosh Chodesh is. Nevertheless, this idea of bonfires and being attached to the Beis Hamikdash and being attached to the Sanhedrin, and that this would be a method of communication, remained, so to speak, ingrained within the Jewish people. So, Lag BaOmer, there arose the custom of lighting the bonfires. The fires, again, were meant to be the zecher to the fires that existed in temple times, and to attest to the supremacy of the Sanhedrin in controlling the calendar in Jewish events. This took on a life of its own, as we know. There are certain things that just, it's interesting, the Chassam Sofer, in his Tshuvas, has a long tshuva about bonfires on Lag BaOmer, to which he is violently opposed. He says it's baltashchis. You're destroying it for no reason. And he also says the goyim laugh at us. You know, in the middle of May, you're lighting a bonfire. For what? He has a whole. So he seems to think that this is a completely foreign custom that somehow crept into Jewish life, and he even advocates doing away with it. However, it became very popular, especially in the Hasidic world, that attached to it a certain spirituality over and above the bonfire itself. And so then we have customs that, for instance, the famous custom of Kaporis and Naser Shemei Tshuva. So the Aruch HaShulchan and many other poskim say that it's a pagan custom. It should be done away with. He writes very strongly, the Aruch HaShulchan, he says, I'll defend any rabbi in this world and in the next that is able to do away with that custom in his community. Yet we know now that for whatever reasons, the Kaporis of Kaporis, it's here. So some people do it a modified way with money and not with the chicken. But the idea, the custom, and we have the power of a custom, even if it may stem from origins that are not necessarily what they should be, nevertheless takes hold, becomes part of the Jewish world. And so the bonfires on Lag BaOmer, which today are pretty much symbolize Lag BaOmer itself. I mean, the celebration of Lag BaOmer is bonfires in Maron, both of which are questionable, and both of which are very later origin than the commemoration of the day itself in Talmudic times. And then there's a discussion. We all know that the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva passed away for a period of 33 days. Which 33 days out of the 50 days between Pesach and Shavuos? The first 33, maybe it's only from Rosh Chodesh Iyar. So there are two different customs. And it's interesting that most of the poskim in Eastern Europe and the Chafetz Chaim and the Mishnah Berurah and the Aruch HaShulchan and others prefer the second period of time to the first. But here in Eretz Yisrael, they always observe the first 33 days because it's brought in the Beis Yosef that way. And the Yosef Karo is the Lord Asher of Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, his opinion rules. And as far, for instance, as the Rabbanut is concerned here in performing weddings, so it's always the first 33 days. And after that, the period of the sphere of mourning is relaxed, etc. So this Lag BaOmer, like many other things in Jewish life, the inner essence of which is not quite clear, but it's become encrusted with customs, with minhagim. And the minhagim have a power all of their own. Power that the Gemara in Beitza says even that minig mevatel halacha. A custom can overrule what the halacha should be. And that's obvious that if you make a bonfire for nothing, it's spelled tashchis, nevertheless the minig is mevatel that halacha, because of the fact that the minig b'klal Yisrael is to have these things. In our time, in Eretz Yisrael, it's far more, I don't know how to put it, far more publicly commemorated than it is in the exile. That's because of Maron, and these customs therefore come to identify the day. They come to mark the day, that it's a day of commemoration. What the commemoration is still vague, but nevertheless, it's a day of commemoration. And we don't say Tachman, and everybody agrees that you can get married on Lag BaOmer. Everybody agrees that you can have your hair cut on Lag BaOmer, etc. And so these became the hallmarks of the day itself. And it's the day that turns us away from Pesach and already introduces us to Shavuos, which is just a few weeks coming. And again, serves the rhythm of the Jewish calendar and the Jewish year. Unfortunately, 2 years ago, we had terrible tragedy here in Israel on Lag BaOmer. We had Maron. People were trampled to death. So that also somehow only increases the mystery of the day. It only makes it even more hidden from us as to the true identity and the true purpose should be. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash Omer Rotza Kodesh Baruch Hu L'Zakos Yisrael L'Pichot Irba Lahem Torah Mitzvot Shenemar Adonai Chafetz Aman Sitko Yakel V'Rabi Adi.